All right, we've got a lot to go through, so everyone stay with me. I put out handout sheets. You either have one in front of yourselves or the person near you. Try and look on. Start off with a question. Questions like this. What is the difference between, and hopefully this will clarify a lot of what we do here, especially the speeches that are given. What's the difference between knowledge and wisdom? Can you be wise without having any knowledge? What do you say, audience?
Yes.
I heard a yes.
Yes.
Yeah? What?
Is this a trick question again?
No?
It's always a trick question.
No? No? No. It is not a trick question. Okay, so what's an example of like a person who's wise?
Somebody who has intuition about people who may not be an educated person or a well-read person, but they just understand what makes a person tick, and they know how to deal with people in a way that is wise.
Yeah, very good. Why is it that a lot of the time when we think of a person who's wise, we think of a person who's older? At least I do. What?
Experience.
Life experience, right? Knowledge is when you know stuff. It's easy to impart. If I want to know more stuff, so I can listen to a class, I can read a book, I can attend some kind of lecture, then you know stuff. People can impart knowledge very easily. Wisdom is the ability to choose between two paths that look almost the same, right? If you have two options, should I attend this college or that college, and you don't know which one to do, so then you have to go to a wise person to have the answer picked for you, or to let them enlighten you. That's almost impossible to teach. It's almost impossible to teach to people, which is why we have to rely on elderly people for our wisdom, because they at least have, over the course of life, made a lot of decisions. They've seen which ones work out, and they can tell you, based on my experience, if you do A, it'll be better than B. Can I prove it with facts? Can I prove it with figures? No and no, but I can prove it based on my own, or I can say that that's what you should do based on my own experiences where I think that you should head. Now, the reason why you can't teach this to someone, right? You can teach people knowledge. You can, sometimes you go to a doctor. I've had this experience. This is how you know you're a grown-up. You're older than your doctor. I had this recently, a couple years ago for the first time. He was a doctor. I was clearly older than him, and he was a doctor, and I was clearly older than him. And I knew I was a grown-up at that moment. I had grown up. And because they were able to impart knowledge to him, right? Now, of course, if you want a second opinion, you're really going for wisdom. Because you're like, hey, this guy just finished his residency. He's still partying on weekends. I'd rather go to someone who has a lot of wisdom, right? So sometimes you want one, sometimes you want the other. But how do you impart wisdom to this young person? So what our sages do in the Gemara is that they tell stories that you read them at first, and they don't seem to make so much sense, or they seem to be fairly pedestrian, not so deep. And if you're a shallow person, so then you read them and you move on. But if you're a person who realizes that the text contains wisdom, which is something that I think that we all realize, that's why we come back week after week, what you do is you start asking questions, and the process of asking questions and unlocking the text is the same as the process of going through different options in life and arriving at the options that you think are the best. Going through a text and asking questions, the process of discovery, is similar to the process of acquiring wisdom, which is one of the reasons why a Torah sage, even if that sage is very young, can have impressive wisdom. Because having gone through a text over and over and over and over again, and gone from a world of confusion to a world of clarity over and over and over again, that process is the way that our sages realized that they could make a person acquire wisdom at a young age, the same way that we acquire knowledge. With that introduction, let's quickly go over a text. We'll ask one or two questions. We'll open it up. We're not going to run out of time. This is a conversation between the famous Roman, Antoninus, and Rebbe, the author of the Mishnah. The conversation goes like this. Antoninus said to Rebbe, after death, the body and the soul can exempt themselves from any divine judgment. How? The body will say, the soul is responsible for sin. From the day she left me, I've been lying here like a stone in the grave, on my best behavior. But then the soul will say back, the body is responsible for sin. From the day that I left him, I've been flying in the air like a bird, on my best behavior. That is Antoninus's complaint. And his complaint is that neither the soul or the body is culpable for sin. Each one can point the finger at the other and say, now that this other member of the body-soul group has departed, I'm not doing anything wrong. Rebbe says back to him, Rebbe responded to Antoninus, I'll give you a parable. Once there was a mortal king that had a beautiful orchard filled with the juiciest, choicest fruits that were just beginning to ripen. He placed 2 guards at the entrance to the orchard. One was disabled and one was blind. The disabled man said to the blind man, I see the most delicious looking fruits ripening in the orchard. Come, let me ride on your shoulders and we will eat them. The disabled man rode on the shoulders of the blind man, and they gathered and ate the fruit. After a few days, the master of the orchard returned. He exclaimed, what happened to all my delicious fruit? The disabled man asked him, do I have any legs that can walk to the fruit? The blind man asked him, do I have any eyes to see the fruit? What did the king do? He placed the disabled man on the shoulders of the blind man and judged them as one individual. So too, the Holy One will toss the soul into the body and judge them together. So, after a cursory reading of this, you think like, that's nice, right? It's like nice. It doesn't really echo, right? It's like a nice story. Blind man, that one's the body, one's the soul. Of course, the body is the person who is blind, right? He has a lot of desire, but no direction. The person who is disabled, who could see, he's the soul. He has direction, but he has no ability to move through the world. Fine. Let's ask a few questions. What was Rebbe saying to Antoninus here? What was he adding to the conversation? How was he making it? What was he bringing new into the story? I think what he brings new into the story is the human resources department. What was the king thinking? The king hired these 2 new people. One guy who's blind and one guy who can't walk to guard his orchard. If you're in business, so then you would say, hey, it's a very inclusive hiring decision, which we're all for, but it's a very foolish hiring decision because neither of these people have the ability to guard the orchard on their own. So I think at a cursory reading, you'd say, this was a foolish king. But we know that the king, of course, represents Hashem, the king represents God, and the orchard represents the world, and these characters are the human being, so we have to take it seriously. So why would the king hire these 2 people if neither of them can do it on their own? What was his intention? He wanted them to work together. He wanted them to work together to guard the orchard. And that's Rebbe's response to Antoninus. Antoninus assumed that the body and the soul are at odds. And they're fighting. And there's pressure. And that's why, as soon as they break their bond, so then they can point fingers at each other in anger and say, everything that went wrong was your fault. Rebbe's saying back to him, no. The intention was that they should work together as a team, and that's why they're judged together. Incidentally, as an aside, this is the philosophical basis for our religious affirmation that there's the idea of the resurrection of the dead. Why should there be a resurrection of the dead? Because in Jewish thought, the soul's not better than the body. They're a team. So whatever they accomplish as a team. and whatever they get, they deserve to be rewarded as a team. That's what Rebbe was saying back to Antoninus. No, you don't get it. It's not supposed to be tension. It's supposed to be a team. And this is why, as many of us are learning, things having to do with mitzvot, things having to do with Shabbos, this is why so much of Judaism has so much to say about what you do on a daily basis. Because it's not about broad philosophical ideas so much as it is about trying to get those ideas to work with what you're eating, what you're doing, how you're enjoying yourself, how you spend your weekends, how you spend your holidays, how you build your families, and all of those ideas. That is Rebbe's response to Antoninus, that we as Jews are not supposed to be living in a world of tension. We as Jews are supposed to be living in a world of cooperation. Thank you all very much.